3 spine-chilling true tales of sinister hauntings, unexplained horrors revealed. Laura's heart raced as she listened intently to the piercing stillness of the night. The heavy air pressed down on her, turning the familiar comfort of home into something oppressive. Shadows stretched and twisted, and the faintest of whispers curled through the air like mist, wrapping around her throat. Her kids, Lucy and Max, had been asleep for almost an hour, but something lurking at the edges of her vision made every hair on her body stand on end. The last few weeks had been filled with odd happenings. The neighbor's cat vanished without a trace, and Lucy insisted she saw someone watching from the bushes. Each time Max claimed to hear a man's voice echoing down the empty halls. "It's just your imagination," Laura had reassured them, her own doubt festering. After working night shifts at the hospital, she barely had the energy to cope with the leaky roof and bills piling high. A man by the foot of their beds. Exhaustion must have blown their minds. But then those whispers began soft, inviting, chilling. On one particularly sleepless night, with shadows clawing at her sanity, Laura encountered Mrs. Hargrove next door. A woman brimming with charm and an aura of sophistication, Mrs. Hargrove became a breath of fresh air amid Laura's chaos. She tended to Lucy and Max, her warm smile easing some worries. But as Laura grew closer to Mrs. Hargrove, the unease in her stomach clawed deep. The strange gatherings just past midnight in the woods sounded like wolf howls. They twisted into laughter when she tried to peer through the curtains. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Determined to protect her kids, guilt overcame Laura as she summoned the courage to explore the dark corners of her basement. Each creak of the stairs echoed ominously, and suffocating dread tightened around her chest. As she opened the heavy door, chilled air rushed past her face. Inside was an ancient room, littered with dust-covered relics that seemed to have been forgotten for decades. Old photographs hung askew, depicting families that once thrived in this house, all wearing hollow smiles. One picture stood out, a family surrounded by shadows that seemed to laugh. Laura's blood ran cold as the walls whispered secrets, tales drenched in sorrow and despair, hinting at the horrors suffered beneath this charming community facade. Her children's playful giggles had morphed into terrified whimpers, and she could no longer deny the bone-deep fear creeping into her heart. Pushing the door shut, she felt the air thicken around her. What was the man they saw? Was he tied to this house? As night cloaked the suburb, panic throbbed in her veins. Would she be able to save Lucy and Max? The thought sent tremors through her body. With every second, the horrors drew closer, a reality she could no longer escape. Shadowy figures weaved through the corners of her home, clinging to the familiar like a vice. And as she stood trembling in the basement, a sudden scream pierced the thick air. Lucy and Max were calling for her. Heart racing, Laura sprinted upstairs, dread gnawing at her with each step. Whatever lurked in the night had revealed itself. The man, no longer just a figment of imagination, awaited at their bedroom door, and this time, he wouldn't be dismissed. Time stood still as she stumbled forward, but the shadows swallowed her screams into nothingness. The door creaked open with an agonizing slowness, each protest of the hinges echoing like a funeral dirge. Laura's heart thudded painfully against her ribs as she stepped into the hallway, instinctively tracing her fingers along the peeling wallpaper, her anchor to reality amid the chaos. The house felt alive, almost breathing, its presence enveloping her in dread. "Mom!" Lucy's voice cut through the silence, bright and terrifying. It came from their bedroom, a tiny oasis of safety in the darkness. But lurking inside that perceived security was the unknown. Whatever shadowy figure had haunted them was no longer an abstraction, it was real. Laura bolted down the hall, the weight of fear pressing heavily on her just as the air thickened. She reached the door, her pulse hammering in her ears. With one swift motion, she flung it open and froze. The room lay in darkness, the faint outline of her children huddled beneath the covers. The nightlight cast an eerie glow that danced with the shadows, mimicking the movement of figures that darted away at the slightest sound. What happened? She gasped, staring at Lucy and Max, who were wide-eyed and trembling that a cold chill washed over her. "He was here, Mommy." Max's voice quivered, and she could see the terror etched into his young features. He was here. But she already knew the answer. The man. Lucy pointed a small finger at the corner of the room. "I don't know, but he was watching us. He smiled like the pictures in the basement." Fear twisted around Laura's chest like a gripping vine, squeezing tighter as the clarity of the evening returned, vivid memories of that ominous basement flashing in her mind. The laughing shadows, the chilling whispers, they weren't just fleeting imaginations. "What do we do?" Lucy's words were barely a whisper, her small voice lost in the unseen horrors creeping toward them. "Stay close," Laura instructed, fury building within her to shield them from whatever was spiraling into their lives. Holding her breath, she listened, straining against the oppressive silence. Suddenly, their bedroom door slammed shut. A gust of wind blew impossible, inside their little home. Panic surged through her as she rushed to the door, heart racing, fingers shaking. It wouldn't budge, locked tight against her desperate attempts. "Mommy!" Lucy's scream shattered the still air, panic intertwining with the threads of darkness that suffocated them. Laura turned, adrenaline rushing through her veins. In the corner, deeper shadows gathered like a thick fog as if they had their own weight, their own intent. "Hold on, I'm coming," she shouted, her voice breaking. The shadows rippled, and from within them emerged a man, face obscured by darkness yet grinning, eyes glinting with malice. He was here, they had finally come. With a sudden surge of defiance, Laura twisted the doorknob again, but the door remained unyielding. She flailed in a frenzy, summoning every ounce of strength before screaming for help, praying a neighbor might hear. Then, a soft voice emerged from the shadows. "Stay with me, children," it cooed, soothing yet sinister, weaving through the chaos like a dark melody. "You'll have no need to be afraid, not anymore." Before Laura could react, the lights flickered and dimmed, covering them in a shroud of darkness. Despair clouded her vision as a chilling grasp closed around her heart. She turned back to her children, determination building. Whatever this was, whatever he was, she would fight. She had to fight deny in that terrible moment. She realized there was no escaping him now. Not in this life, not in this house. But what awaited them in the shadows could be far worse than their deepest fears. Laura faced the man, adrenaline coursing and terror pillaging her thoughts, as she heard whispers once more, this time closing in from all around them. "Lucy, Max, hold tight." She cried, but in her mind, she could barely hear herself. Just as the darkness began to completely consume them, flashes of light splintered the shadows, and the figure leaned closer, mouth stretching into a wide grin as it simply whispered, "Welcome home." And then, everything went black. What had she just released into their world? Laura fought against the inexplicable darkness, her heart hammering in her chest like a frantic drum. She felt like a marionette severed from its strings, her body moving on instinct as she searched for her children in the encroaching shadows. "Lucy. Max." She called, voice trembling as terror twisted through her. The dark was thick and suffocating, wrapping around her like a wet blanket, muffling her cries. She reached out, fingers trembling, searching blindly for the warmth of her children's bodies. "Mommy." Lucy's voice, small and scared, floated to her from the depths of the void. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The sinister man lingered just out of sight, the air around him pulsating with malevolence. "I'm here." She called back, her voice now steadier. "Just hold on to each other." The darkness flickered, revealing a fleeting silhouette, a shape lurking, waiting. The man's grin flashed again, sharp and unnerving, before vanishing into the absence. Suddenly, Laura felt tiny hands clasped tightly around her own. The relief jolted through her like electricity. "I'm here, I've got you." She breathed, but her voice was laced with doubt. How were they supposed to escape? "Mommy, the man he said he'd take us." Max whimpered, his voice a vibration of pure fear. She could feel his little hands shaking. "No, he can't take us," she replied fiercely, each heartbeat matching the wild rhythm of her thoughts. "We won't let him." In the oppressive dark, whispers coiled ominously around them, a haunting chorus filling the air with snatches of chilling phrases. "Come play with us, stay forever, never leave." Laura's stomach twisted as dread snaked into her thoughts. Memories tumbled through her mind, echoes of laughter mingled with cries, shadows in the basement. Something grotesque and twisted had been waiting for them. Fighting against the rising tide of despair, Laura forced herself to think. They needed a plan. "Children, we're going to find a way out," she whispered, her determination lighting a fire within. "We can climb out the window." "The basement," Lucy suggested, her voice shaking. "Right. We'll go to the basement." They needed to confront the heart of the horror that resided within their home. Laura wasn't sure if it was bravery or sheer desperation, but she moved quickly, tugging her children toward the door. With a primal scream, she twisted the doorknob again. The door gave, creaking open with a painful groan, revealing a corridor just as dark and silent. Before they could step out, a hand shot through the shadows, gripping the edge of the door frame. By its outline, Laura could tell it was the man, his body a silhouette of nightmare, blocking their retreat. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, smile unsettling and wide. Fear gripped her, but she couldn't allow it to overtake her. "Shift left," she ordered, instinctively pulling her children with her. The shadow lunging forward as they slipped past him. Adrenaline surged as Laura dashed down the hall, her only goal to reach the basement door. Each step felt lighter as the weight of the darkness clawed at their heels like a feral beast. She reached for the basement door, its handle cool against her palm. Yes, they'd confront whatever horror was lurking below. "Go," she urged, ushering her children ahead of her. They stumbled down the stairs, their feet pounding against the wooden steps, echoing like thunder. The scent of mustiness enveloped them, mingling with the acrid aroma of decay. As she glanced back, she saw the man standing at the top of the stairs, watching, his expression a mask of chilling glee. "What are you going to do down there?" he taunted, voice echoing, reverberating off the walls. Laura shuddered. She couldn't let him win. "We'll find a way to stop you, whatever you are," she shouted, a voice filled with fear but also fiery resolve. The shadows of the basement seemed to greet them, swirling and beckoning as they descended deeper into the unknown. But what awaited them in the dark? What lay hidden in the corners of that forsaken space? As she reached the floor, her breath caught in her throat. A faint glow illuminated shapes on the walls, shapes that shouldn't exist. And then she heard it, the whispering again, circling like a storm, pulling her closer. "Do you see?" it laughed. "The truth you've been hiding from. Welcome to your reality." What had they truly uncovered? Laura felt dread grip her once more, the shadows swirling like predators poised to strike. In that moment, it became clear that the battle was only beginning. Would they ever escape the sinister embrace of this house, or was there a deeper, darker evil lurking just beyond the veil of the everyday? What awaited them behind the shadows? The real horror was just about to begin. A cold draft seeped through the basement, wrapping around Laura like icy fingers. The dim glow revealed walls splattered with bizarre, fleeting images, faces twisted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. She swallowed hard, heart racing even faster. This wasn't just a basement, it felt like a tomb. "Mommy?" Max's voice broke through the fog of fear. "What is happening?" His question lingered in the air, heavy with dread. "We'll figure it out," Laura said, forcing strength into her voice. Even as her insides churned, something shimmered in the corner, pulling her attention. It was a mirror, cracked and dusty, the glass flickering with unnerving energy. As she stepped closer, the reflections shifted and twisted, morphing into grotesque images of her past, her children laughing, then crying, then screaming. She recoiled, the distorted reality crushing her resolve. "Mommy, I don't like it here." Lucy's voice quivered, her small form shaking next to her. "Stay close," Laura barked, keeping a firm grip on their hands. She had to be their anchor. Memories of her own childhood crept into her consciousness, things she had buried deep. The basement had always been unsettling, filled with shadows and tales of terror. If only she had listened. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed behind them, the sound reverberating through the confined space. Instinct forced Laura to spin around, breath caught in her throat. The man. He was there, emerging from the dark, his grin cutting through the shadows like a knife. "Such a lovely place to play," he hissed, voice dripping with mockery. The air seemed to thicken, wrapping around them like a noose. "Get away from us!" Laura shouted, bravado rising. But deep down, she felt like a terrified rabbit cornered by a wolf. To her surprise, the man stopped. He tilted his head, curiosity igniting in his eyes. "Oh, but you're just getting to know each other," he said, voice smooth like silk. "This house has so many stories to tell, and you're all part of them now." As he spoke, the whispers escalated, swirling around them like a frantic storm. Join us stayed forever. They were chilling, seductive, enticing her to succumb to the darkness. "Listen to me," Laura yelled over the cacophony. "Stay quiet and together." She took a deep breath, trying to muster courage. In that moment, she realized she felt different. A flicker of defiance ignited within her. "Children, we need to find a way to break this spell." Her words resonated with the faint light that pulsed with each frantic whisper. The truth, it beckoned. Trembling, Laura searched her surroundings. A rusty toolbox lay against the wall, its contents spilling out like discarded nightmares. She grabbed a crowbar, the cold metal oddly comforting in her hands. It wasn't much, but it felt like a weapon against the unknown. "Mommy, what if he gets us?" Max whispered, the fear evident in his wide eyes. "He won tea." The determination surged as she drew her voice low, "We'll escape this. Together." But just as the words left her mouth, the darkness thickened, pushing against her, and something rumbled further in the shadows. A roar, unearthly and deep, reverberated through the basement as if the house itself was waking from its slumber. "What have you done?" The man's voice dripped with fury. "You think you can run?" Panic clawed at Laura's throat. She felt the pull of the shadows' voices screaming for them to join, to surrender. "Children, hold on to me," she commanded, clenching the crowbar tightly. She could feel dread clawing at her sanity, pushing back against her will. With a surge of determination, they started to back away, eyes wide and frantic. The whispers turned into shrieks, a terrifying chorus that grew louder, like an avalanche of despair cascading toward them, but they wouldn't be buried. The battle for freedom had just begun. As they reached the basement door, now just a silhouette of hope against the swirling darkness, Laura felt something change. The shadows began to surge forward, almost seething. The man's laughter followed them, mocking their escape. "Welcome home," he bellowed, voice echoing like thunder, breaking through her courage. What lay beyond the door? Would the world outside still hold its light, or had they already stepped into something far worse? The ground trembled beneath them, and time felt suspended. With every ounce of strength, Laura yanked the door. Would they make it out, or was the house about to reclaim its lost prey? She braced for the answer. The door creaked open, but the step beyond was not what Laura expected. Instead of the familiar setting of their home, it led to a swirling mist that swallowed the world outside. The air felt charged, saturated with dread. "Mommy! I can't see!" Lucy shrieked, her voice shrill with panic. "Hold on tight," Laura commanded, yanking the door wider, heart pounding like a war drum against her ribcage. She dragged the children forward, feet shuffling over an unseen threshold. The moment they crossed, the shrieks grew distant. Yet, as both relief and doubt washed over her, an unearthly chill soaked into their bones. Light pulled away, fading like a candle doused by a gust of wind. Suddenly, they were engulfed in darkness, thick, suffocating darkness. "Where are we?" Max's whisper trembled, teeth clacking together as the cold seeped deeper. "Just a little further," Laura choked out, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. As her eyes adjusted, shadowy shapes swirled and shifted, and she felt a pressure building against her chest. A low growl rumbled from the void. Her breath caught as she turned cautiously, crouching with her children behind her. "Sorry to keep you waiting," the man's voice purred, slithering from the dark. Shadows morphed into his silhouette, the grin sharpening like a knife ready to cut. "We've only just begun to play." She tightened her grip on the crowbar, shifting her children behind her. "Stay back," she warned, feeling the weight of despair pressing down, but then the ground beneath them began to tremble again. Not just the floor, but the very essence of haunting darkness vibrating alive with malevolence. Laura's surroundings blurred, souls of the damned inching toward her from the void, their hollow eyes pleading, faces distorted in terror. "Help us," they whispered, voices layered like an echo passing through the thin veil of reality. "Let us out now." Laura screamed, a primal surge propelling her forward. The murmur of the lost felt like chains tightening around her arms, grasping, pulling her down. "Mommy!" Max wailed, clinging to her leg. Each cry tugged at her heart, threatening to shatter her resolve, but one thought compelled her, a gleam of strength. "I won't lose you," she shouted, turning her gaze back to the man. "You can't have us." He stepped closer, the darkness swirling around him like a storm of shadows. "Oh, but you're already part of this place," he hissed, fingers stretching out, beckoning her with deceptive elegance. "This house has ways of keeping what it finds." Clenching her teeth, Laura swung the crowbar, metallic clang echoing. The impact felt solid yet futile, as he melted back into the shadows, his laughter reverberating a sinister melody that etched itself into her mind, the growling intensified, vibrating deep within her. The room shook, dust rained down like tiny specters of despair. Laura felt the walls closing in, the weight of the house pressing against her senses, suffocating hope. "Look! The mirror!" Lucy screamed, pointing into a silver sheen emerging from the dark, reflecting nothing but shadows. It danced with grief, swirling with the faces that once cried, now twisted in remorse. "No!" Laura gasped, backing away instinctively. But the mirror pulsed, its surface bubbling like molten glass, reaching out for them. Shadows clawed at her heels, snapping and pulling like ravenous beasts hungry for souls. "We can't stay here," Max cried, tugging at her arm. Laura's heart raced. The children needed her. "Run!" she screamed, racing toward the mirror before it could claim their sanity. As they approached, reality warped, a bridge of light flickered within the chaos. But before they could reach it, the darkness surged forward, an unrelenting wall of anguish. The man stepped fully into view, blocking their escape, his grin widening unnaturally. "Oh no, my dear," he crooned, a foreboding shadow enveloping them. The game is far from over in the chaos. She felt her grip slip, swaying against the pounding dread. Would they break free from the grasp of the house, or would they be trapped eternally within its grasp? Suddenly, a strong pull yanked at Laura, dragging her toward the mirror. The cries of her children echoed, merging with the whispers of the lost. "Make your choice." As her feet stumbled, terror gripped her heart. The mirror beckoned, but it promised a cost. What awaited them beyond the glass? Would they be saved, or would they step into a fate worse than death? Laura was forced into a decision, one that could change everything. The light shimmered, and just as she was about to take a step forward, everything went dark again. The ground quaked violently beneath their feet, as if the house itself were alive, writhing in agony. Laura felt her children slip further from her grasp, their small bodies heavy with fear. The darkness seemed to reach out with tendrils that grasped at her very soul, suffocating her hopes. "Stay close," she yelled, panic lacing her voice. They stumbled backward, edging closer to the swirling mass of shadow that whispered of despair. A part of her wanted to leap into the mirror, to embrace the unknown and escape the terror just behind them. But another part, a deeper instinct, held her back. What if it was a trap, a way for the darkness to claim them all? Just then, a scream cut through the heavy air, a high-pitched wail that sent a shiver racing down her spine. "Mommy!" Lucy cried, the sound raw, filled with desperation. "Hang on!" Laura shouted, heart hammering. She turned, eyes wide with urgency. Through the chaotic swirl of shadows, a figure emerged, a dark shape, tall and menacing, moving with purpose. The grinning man loomed larger, reclaiming his place in the cursed world they had stumbled into. He circled them slowly, his smile chillingly static. "Did you think you could leave so easily?" he taunted. "This house is hungry. It feasts on fear, on sorrow. And you've brought plenty." He stepped closer, shadows intertwining with his figure, flowing like a living cloak. Laura tightened her grip on the crowbar, feeling sweat drip down her brow in the biting cold. "No more games. Let us go," she shouted, daring to raise her chin, even as dread clawed at her insides. "Oh, sweet mother." His voice oozed mockery, layered with the sorrowful cries echoing around them. "You will play the last game, whether you like it or not." He gestured, and the shadows swirled violently, forming eerie faces twisted in agony. "Mommy!" Max cried again, clutching Lucy's hand, but their bravery was fading. Laura could see it in their eyes, pure terror mirrored in hers. The man grinned wider, extending a hand to the mirror, which pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting them into its depths. Laura hesitated. She could leap through the looking glass into whatever fate awaited her. But would it claim her children? No, no. The shadows moaned, the lost souls whispering frantic apologies, their ghostly forms reaching toward her. "Join us, it's easy, just let go, don't listen," she screamed, summoning a fierce anger. "We're not yours." With every ounce of strength, she swung the crowbar, aiming for the figure that blocked their escape. Tension crackled in the air as the metal struck true. But instead of breaking him, the blow passed through, like a punch against fog. He laughed, a sound like breaking glass, sharp and filled with malice. Unfazed, he shivered into darker hues, drawing closer still. "Do you even know how to play?" he mocked. "You need to sacrifice something to win at this game. What will it be? Your life or theirs?" "No." Laura's voice echoed in the void, but doubt crept in. Behind her, the mirror shifted, revealing flickers of her children's laughter from better days. Her heart clenched. The image reflected back at her, a perfect facade, like glass hiding the chaos within. "Choose," the man hissed, extending his hand toward the mirror, where Lucy's sweet face lingered. "What will you give to save them?" A sudden burst of light erupted, blinding and warm, disorienting. For a fleeting moment, she felt hope real and tangible. But the shadows constricted tighter, squeezing out her breath. "No. Don't take them," Laura shouted, breaking the momentary grip of serenity. In that instant, she saw the truth in the man's eyes. It wasn't just a game to him. It was a feast, and they were the prey. With renewed vigor, she turned, desperation igniting in her heart. She'd fight for them. They were worth the risk. They had to be. But then the walls shifted again, echoing her thoughts, swaying like the pendulum of fate. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of forgotten voices, filling the air with dread, each one pleading, crying for release. "Mommy!" screamed Lucy, her voice breaking the trance. That in that moment, Laura realized she had to act fast. The darkness loomed closer, eager to snatch them back into its cold embrace. "Let us go, now," she shouted, grasping the children's hands tightly, hoping against hope that they could break free from the grip of the house. She took a step toward the mirror, but the man leaped in front of them, arms wide, laughter filling the suffocating air. "You can't escape. This is your home now." Suddenly, the ground shook violently, sending them tumbling to the side. The mirror cracked, shards flying everywhere like bullets. Shadows hissed, and Laura knew this was not the end. They just needed to find a way through this nightmare. What awaited them past the mirror? Would they escape, or would the darkness swallow them whole, binding them forever to the house's cursed fate? The chilling question loomed as they prepared for the next desperate leap. As Laura steadied herself, an earth-shattering crack ripped through the air, the walls seemingly closing in. The mirror, once a gateway to escape, now felt like a maw, ready to consume all of them. Shards scattered like sparks, glinting dangerously in the dim light. She pulled her children closer, their frightened breaths mixing with the echoes of madness that danced around them. "Mommy, what are we going to do?" Max whispered, his small voice shaking more than his body. "Hold on tight," Laura replied, her grip around their hands tightening. Fear clawed at her throat, but she couldn't let it consume her. "Not now," the ground rumbled again, more violently this time, and a guttural growl emanated from the depths of the house. Shadows thickened, swirling around a grinning figure who now seemed to solidify into a grotesque form, a parody of a man. He reveled in their despair, eyes glinting like polished obsidian. "Can you feel it?" He strutted closer, his voice dripping with sadistic pleasure. "The darkness is narrowing. It craves a sacrifice. One way or another, you will give me what I desire." And then, as if responding to his twisted command, the walls warped and shifted, revealing fleeting images mocking illusions of memories and what-ifs. Children laughing, sunlit gardens, and birthday cakes, all shrouded in dark laughter that transformed into anguished cries. "Enough!" Laura roared, rage igniting within her. She swung the crowbar again, this time letting out every ounce of her fear and fury with the blow. It passed through him again, but instead of cocky laughter, there was a flash of irritation. "Insolent! You think you can defy me?" The man's expression darkened for a fleeting moment, revealing an ugly visage beneath the charming facade. "Mommy!" The kids cried simultaneously. A wave of shadows surged toward them, tendrils reaching like clawed hands trying to snatch her children away. "Run!" Laura urged, feeling the adrenaline pump through her veins like fire. With a fierce determination, she yanked her children into a sprint, their feet pounding against the quaking floor. They raced down a hallway that seemed to elongate, the exit a distant and fleeting dream. But then they stumbled upon ghastly relics from the house's haunted past, portraits of long-forgotten souls, eyes piercing through the darkness, filled with terror that echoed their plight. Each step they took felt heavier, weighed down by the sorrow that clung to the very air. "Mommy, I can't," Lucy gasped, exhaustion settling in her little limbs. "I know, sweetheart, just a little further," Laura pleaded, her own body screaming for rest. But the darkness pulsed behind them, a relentless predator that would not allow them to escape so easily, and then they reached a door, wooden and weathered, seemingly untouched by any shadow. Laura gripped the knob, heart pounding loudly in her chest, praying for salvation. Just behind her, she could hear the man's laughter, chilling and close, his voice a venomous whisper as he threaded through the darkness, taunting and mocking. "Do you really think that door will save you?" he crooned, slithering into the light from the flickering electricity above. "This house knows your fears. It knows what you want to forget." Fingers trembling, she pushed down the knob. The door didn't budge. She threw her shoulder against it and felt her breath hitch as the laughter grew louder, a shrill symphony of despair. "Stand back!" she yelled, gathering her strength for one last desperate attempt. With a huge heave, she slammed her shoulder into the door, feeling it crack beneath her weight. The laughter stopped abruptly, a hush falling over the darkness, but it lingered in her mind, festering like an open wound. Just one more push, she thought, despair wedged deep in her throat. A sharp pain shot through her shoulder as she crashed again. Would they break through? Or would this be their final stand against the insatiable darkness forever? The question hung ominously as the shadows shrieked around them. Laura braced herself for the next impact, every nerve in her body screaming in protest. She could feel her heart thundering as if it feared the upcoming darkness as much as she did. The shadows writhed like snakes around them, a force that grasped at her with icy fingers, trying to drag her into its insatiable maw. "Max, Lucy," she called, her voice cutting through the despair. "Focus on me. Keep your eyes on me." She could see her children, their faces pale and wide-eyed with terror. Max clenched his sister's hand tightly, a small fortress against the cold creeping panic that began to invade his heart. This isn't happening. Laura screamed, her resolve hardening like tempered steel. She inhaled sharply and hurled her shoulder against the door one more time. This time, it felt different, she felt a shift. The wood groaned, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the hallway, pushing back against the shadows. "Yes." She gasped, adrenaline sparking through her veins. With one final push, she threw her weight against the door. It gave way suddenly, crashing open with a splintering sound that rang through the corridor. As the door swung wide, an eerie light erupted from beyond, illuminating a path through the swirling darkness. "Go!" she barked, shoving her children ahead of her. They stumbled into the brightness that seemed to repel the shadows like a shield. The laughter faded into garbled whispers behind them, melting into a cacophony as they stepped through the threshold. The air felt different here, less oppressive, yet still heavy with an unshakable dread. They entered a room that had once been serene, a small library filled with golden-hued sunlight filtering through dusty windows. Bookshelves loomed tall and filled with titles that breathed in long-forgotten stories. But the atmosphere was marred by a lurking presence, palpable and menacing. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lucy breathed, stepping closer to Laura as they surveyed their surroundings. "Me too, sweetie," Laura replied, scanning the room. Something didn't feel right. The hairs on her neck prickled, and she could almost feel eyes watching them from the shadows of the shelves. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, the sound reverberating through the quiet space, sealing them in. Panic rose like bile in her throat. She rushed to the door, yanking at the handle, but it was locked tight. "Max, help me," Laura urged, her breath quickening. He joined her, pulling with all his might, but the door wouldn't budge. "We're trapped," he shouted, terror spilling from his voice. "Look." Lucy pointed at the shelves. A shadow flickered, then another, weaving itself between the books with a life of its own. The whispers grew clearer, a murmur of voices blending into a chant so faint but sinister. "Mommy, make it stop," Lucy shrieked, pressing her face into Laura's pant leg. "I can't," Laura said, her heart racing as she turned to face the swirling darkness that encircled them. There was no escape. The shadows coalesced into forms, twisted figures emerging from the books, their faces twisted with grief and despair. "Leave us," one shrieked. It was a plea, raw and twisted, echoing through the air like a chilling lullaby. With every waking moment, Laura felt their grasp strengthening, clawed fingers tangling around the edges of her mind. The shadows were filled with sorrow, tormenting the souls inside. They had taken form, but still hungered for more. "Protect your sister," Laura shouted at Max. "Don't let them." Suddenly, the chanting escalated into screams, all the voices merging into a chaotic frenzy of terror. Laura glanced around, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. She had to find a way to fight back. But how could they battle what they couldn't see, what they couldn't understand? Uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. "What do you want?" she yelled into the darkness, desperation coating her voice. The figures hesitated, the wailing hovering just above silence. A moment of stillness wrapped around them, pregnant with dread. Then, from the shadows, one ghastly face stepped closer, lips forming a word. she couldn't quite decipher. Remember, and just as the word echoed through her mind, a surge of overwhelming images flooded her, memories she thought she had buried. Memories of a darkness she had chosen to forget. "Laura!" Max shouted, pulling at her sleeve. She turned to see her son's terrified eyes locked on something behind her, a figure, wrapped in the shadows, inching closer. "Don't look!" She screamed, but it was too late. With a final, chilling laugh, the shadow lunged forward, and everything shattered. The room spun, colors blending into chaos as the terrifying reality closed in. Where would the darkness lead them next? Would they uncover a twisted truth or lose everything forever? The light flickered, then vanished, plunging them into darkness. Laura's heart raced, echoing in the void. The shadows pressed closer, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. The laughter returned, twisted and mocking, a haunting reminder that the real nightmare had just begun. "Stay close," she urged, gripping her children's hands. Max squeezed tight, his knuckles white. Lucy shivered, barely making a sound, her wide eyes reflecting the fear coursing through the room. "Mom," Max whispered, a tremor in his voice. "What do we do?" "I don't know," she admitted. The air was thick, heavy with sorrow. "But we can't give up." Another flicker of light breached the dark. A single candle ignited on a nearby table, casting flickering shadows that danced erratically against the walls. Laura seized the moment, tugging her children toward it. The flame flickered, as if it too hesitated against the darkness. "Look!" Lucy pointed, her voice a mix of hope and urgency. A wall of books had shifted, revealing a narrow passageway. But there was no mistaking the whisper that crawled from the depths of the library, 1,000 mournful voices, tangled together in a chilling lament. "Mommy, I don't like this," Lucy whimpered, inching away from the shadows that seemed to breathe. Suddenly, one of the books fell from the shelf, thudding to the ground like a heartbeat, drawing their attention. Laura approached cautiously, heart pounding. The cover was old, dust-covered, and scratched. It glowed faintly, the title embossed in faded gold letters, "Remember Me." "What if it's a way out?" Max suggested, hope rising in his voice. "A trap," Laura countered, instinct screaming at her to protect her children. But that same instinct whispered that it could also hold answers. The whispers intensified, swirling around them, drowning out her thoughts. "Remember, remember," it echoed, a ghostly refrain, pulling at her memories, beckoning her closer to the book. "Mom!" Max tugged at her sleeve, fear lacing each syllable. "We have to go." "Not yet." Laura snapped, torn between the darkness closing in and the allure of the ancient tome. The minute she touched it, the world convulsed again. The candle flickered violently and went out, leaving them shrouded in total darkness. "Mommy! I can't see!" Lucy cried, panic swelling behind her small voice. "Hold on to my hand," Laura ordered, hitting the ground with her palm, searching for the book. But in the suffocating blackness, her fingers met only cold air. Then reality fractured, and the floor beneath them trembled ominously. A rumble, low and guttural, grew into a roar, a distant heartbeat of the building leaking malevolence. The walls shivered as if alive, wanting nothing more than to consume them. "Mom!" Max screamed, "It's breaking apart." The air grew colder. Laura felt an icy breath rasp against her cheek, and she stumbled back, pulling her children toward her. "We need to run." "Where?" Max's voice cracked with fear. "There's nowhere to go." The whispering erupted into a cacophony of cries and pleas, clutching at Laura's mind. "Remember us. We are forgotten. Stop it." She yelled, her own voice feeling feeble against the tide of sorrowful cries. "What do you want from us?" The shadows quivered, and for the briefest moment, a vision flashed before her, faces twisted in anguish, mouths wide in silent screams, reaching out to her as if she could somehow ease their pain. A flash before the darkness engulfed them all. "Mom!" Lucy's voice broke her trance. Then, the ground beneath them bucked violently, splitting open with a deafening crack. "Run!" Laura urged, shoving her children ahead. They darted toward the dark passage, shadows clawing at their heels, but all she could think about was that book, half-forgotten memories bubbling to the surface, swimming in the chaos. As they reached the threshold of the passageway, Laura cast a final glance back. The library was shifting, twisting, the shadows swirling with rage, and she felt her pulse quicken. The answer they sought lay within, but could it also hold their doom? The darkness roared, a feral sound that made her shudder with fear. What truth refused to die, lurking in the heart of the dead library? And could Laura face what awaited them beyond the dark? The passageway opened into a small, dimly lit room that smelled of damp earth and mildew. Walls adorned with peeling wallpaper whispered secrets of generations past. Laura took a deep breath, her heart racing, ushering Lucy and Max inside. They huddled together, casting wary glances at every shadow that threatened the fragile safety of their tight-knit trio. "Where are we?" Max whispered, clutching Lucy tight. "I don't know," Laura replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "But we have to stay strong." In the corner, an old trunk beckoned, its rusty locks whispering promises of forgotten treasures. That book's ethereal glow lingered in her mind, intertwined with the cries that had haunted their escape. She approached the trunk cautiously, brushing off layers of dust with trembling fingers. What if it held the answers they needed? What if it was their salvation? "Mommy, please don't," Lucy pleaded. "Just a second, honey. I need to see." Her voice trailed off as she unlatched the trunk, and the lid creaked open, revealing a collection of faded photographs and tattered letters. Laura leaned forward, heart pounding as she rifled through the contents. Each photograph unveiled faces and stories, families who had lived in the house before, all flashing smiles now bathed in shadows that clawed at them through history. The letters spoke of unease, of dark nights and watchful eyes. As she read deeper, a chilling realization struck her. This house, it feeds on fear. These families, they tried to escape, too. Max and Lucy exchanged frightened glances, the weight of realization crashing over them like an avalanche of dread. "Mom, what do we do?" Lucy's small voice quavered, wrapping Laura's heart in a vice. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness, slicing through the thick air. "Do you really think you can outrun your past?" It sneered. The man from their nightmares emerged, shadows curling around him like a living cloak, eyes glinting with malevolence. Laura moved instinctively, shielding her children behind her. "Get away from us!" she shouted, feeling a fierce warmth of protectiveness surging within her. He laughed, the sound ricocheting off the walls. "They were mine before, only waiting for you to come back." "No." Laura's voice shook, bolstered by desperation. "They're not yours." With newfound determination, Laura's fingers slipped into the trunk, caressing a frayed letter that seemed to pulse with urgency. "Together, we can break this curse." Max and Lucy stepped beside her, fear igniting a fierce bond. "We want to go home." Max chimed in defiantly, though his voice trembled. The man sneered, the shadows swirling closer. "You think you can break free? You brought this upon yourselves." "No." Laura screamed back, clutching her children's hands. "We refuse to be the next victims of your darkness." Just then, the letters she held began to shimmer, releasing a bright light that enveloped the room. As the illumination spread, the shadows recoiled, hissing and curling away from the radiant warmth. "Let them out. Help them!" Laura shouted, invoking the voices she felt trapped in the stale air. The whispers erupted into a chaotic symphony of sorrow, but now, they felt infused with hope, compelling. With every ounce of her strength, she recited the words from the letter, desperately wishing to fulfill the promise of light within the darkness. "We break this cycle. We reclaim our lives." As she spoke, the walls seemed to pulse, the house itself trembling. The shadowy figure writhed in agony, words turning to shrieks. No. You can't. This is my domain. The ground shook, and for a moment, it felt like gravity itself was shifting. The struggling souls of the past surged, faces shining through the veil of shadows, chanting together, releasing the fear that chained them. Let us free. They cried. With a final scream, the man lunged forward but was ablaze with blinding light. The glow expanded, surging through the cracks in the walls and breaking open the foundation of dread that had held it captive for so long. Go now. Laura urged, pulling her children toward the opening that had formed in the back of the room. This way. They raced forward, the light pushing back the shadows, wrapping around them in a protective embrace as they sprinted out of the house and back into the night. As they emerged, the house groaned, a guttural sound that echoed with pain and loss. Shadows flitted behind the windows like fleeting specters. They stood breathless outside, drinking in fresh air, the oppressive weight of the darkness lifting. Laura turned to her children, her heart gripped by a mix of triumph and tenderness. We made it. We're free. Lucy and Max clung to her, a jumble of relief washing over them like summer rain. As dawn broke on the horizon, casting golden rays across the landscape, Laura felt the last remnants of the nightmare slip away, fading into the horizon like a bad dream vanishing at daybreak. In that moment, they understood the power of their bond and the strength of defiance against darkness. We're home now, Laura whispered, her voice filled with newfound hope, as they stepped forward into the light of a new day, leaving the shadows forever behind. But if they learned anything from their ordeal, it was that the past should never be forgotten. Shadows hold stories, but they don't have to own the future. Before you go, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic end. This is the moment to show your support.